We'll start again. Hi guys, how have you been? Been a wonderful week. Great. Let's talk about supervision. I didn't hit record. So, your supervisions you've done, you're right. I think they are very much more of a performance tool. We're not going to nitpick, but what we need to have is just clear outcomes. Because if we performance manage somebody, it should be here's the issues, there's the goals. If it's reflections, what was the lesson? What did we learn and why? And then if it's supervision, let's talk about our feelings. So it's good that you're having them. Now what you need to do is plan them in the diary so they are consistent. So at least each week you provide an opportunity for group supervision. I noticed you brought everyone in. They don't all have to be face-to-face. You know, think about cost-effective solutions. So cost-effective solutions is it can be online, it can be done via Zoom, or again, you may want to use other mediums like emails or whatever, okay? But yes, of course, face-to-face is nicer, but is it really effective? Is it cost-effective? Okay, good. With regards then to the policies and procedures, so the ones that I've seen the second time round, very little amendment from me. They kind of sailed through, didn't they? We've got that. We've understood it. It goes to show that if you beat a procedure into somebody, it will stick. So what I now need to see is you training somebody else to do the same task. Okay, so I now know that you can do it, but what I don't know is that you can teach somebody else to do it. Okay, so what I need is for you guys to train somebody else up in the process, because part of your role as managers is obviously training people and developing them. Okay, and let's face it, washing somebody, that's not a difficult skill. Teaching somebody to write a policy does become a difficult skill. So we want to make sure that we are being pushed and challenged ourselves, because if we think about communication, there's a theorist called Shannon and Weaver, the sender and the receiver, the coder and decoder. I now know that you know it because I've tested you, but when you talk to other people, are your communication skills strong enough, or are they going to get lost? Okay, so that's that test. We'll see that. Okay, so please make sure that you train somebody up in the next week on how to do policies.
Policy and the big captain, right?
Yeah, the policies and captains, because I need to know that you're able to develop your team, because when I leave the business, I need to know that you know it and that you're able to do what I was doing in a nutshell. Good. Okay, so now let's talk about risk. And we're going to do risk over a couple of weeks because it is such a big subject. Now, within your Careline Live, I know that you have risk assessment tools, etc., etc. What I want to do first of all is show you the United Care Network. Now, I've given you the link for this. Let's try again, the United Care Network. Right, so in here, this is a resource website that I've built for care providers. And in here, you're going to find lots of helpful things to help you in your job, okay? You're going to go to the network portal and just log in. And when you log in, down at the bottom, you've got some tools. You've got training and development stuff. So even though you have a training and development manager, as CQC managers, you need to understand everything about training. So you need to be able to deliver training, you need to be able to train, you need to understand the mandatory requirements. So that's all under training. Recruitment and retention. So we know recruiting staff can be difficult, lots of risk around that, so that's there. Hot topics is our weekly stuff. Updates is what we're doing. So if you click on the updates, if we scroll down, you'll see that that's the stuff that Wagner has started to do, the care champions and stuff like that. But then here under quality assurance, this is how you're going to audit your services and maintain everything. So we've got audit tools, internal, external, CPD accreditation, and then other bits and pieces. So we'll just run through this quickly, and then we'll look at the tools. So under audit tools, in here, you can see a whole array of topics. Now, in there, then you've got things like your induction books, your governance planners, your toolkits, continuity stuff, safety, recruitment and retention, all of that stuff. And as you go into each of those, you'll see things around risk, etc. Okay, so there's just some tools there for you to have a look at and start playing with. Internal audits are your ISO procedures. So do you remember last time we talked about ISO? You've got your 9001, which is your document control. So that's what you've been doing for your policies and procedures. You've been following ISO 9001 principles. Okay. You've then got your 18,000 and 15,000. So the 18,000 is your health and safety. So risk assessments falls under the Health and Safety at Work Act 1974, etc. And there is an ISO standard for managing procedures of health and safety in workplaces. So not just care, but everywhere. And down here, there's a quality manual. And in that quality manual, it looks at here, risk reduction, compliance, how you audit, and all the legal stuff. Again, if you've got a really good risk management system, you get the certification, etc. Okay, so lots of stuff in there for you to have a look at to help you with your role. And the other one was environmental impact. External audits. So external audits are national things that you can use to help benchmark yourself. So things like dignity champions, mental health at work, commitment stuff. So let's say you're doing your risk assessment around staff's well-being. You might go, oh, if we become a mental health workplace champion and we get that kite mark, it will give us all the tools how to manage mental health in the workplace. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So there's lots of things that you can do to help with stuff. And again, the FSB is the Federation for Small Businesses. They have loads of stuff around health and safety, etc., etc. And again, there's lots of things around trainer and accreditation. So that's your United Care Network bits and pieces. Okay. Then under my banner, I'm going to give you access to some tools. Okay, and we'll open those up. So we'll open those up. There we go. So here, this file is what I sent to Link earlier to. So in here, you've got, and this is all to do with moving and handling. So the first thing we're looking at is moving and handling. Okay. So here we've got health and safety around moving and handling, the risk assessments around moving and handling, information for your service users around moving and handling, the different types of slings and the requirements and risk assessments for moving and handling. The SOP stands for Standard Operating Procedures around moving and handling. So that's all the right ways of doing something. Then staff training. So once you've done your risk assessments, once you've got your processes, how are you monitoring compliance? And that's your compliance side. And then what I've written here is 2 books for you, one around risk assessment tools and one around patients, about the process, sorry, for risk assessments. So the first book we'll look at is, I've called them micro learning because it's little chunks of learning. So this book basically covers the risk assessment tools for when risk assessing. And what I mean by that is, when I see a risk, when I see a problem with moving and handling, I need the evidence behind it. Okay, I can't just go, oh, that's dangerous. I need to go, that's dangerous because. So it's the detail. So if we think about care planning, this is the detail into care planning. And when we do risk assessing in moving and handling, we have 3 assessment tools. We have the FIM Score, the Borg score, and the Likert Scale. Now, these scores are what your occupational therapists are using when they assess patients. Okay, so they're called assessment tools or evidence-based tools. And I'm not going to run through them all in here because they're in the paperwork, but I just want you to read this booklet that I've written, and it will explain what each tool is and what each tool does. But basically, you have a task, you apply the tool to the task, it comes up with a figure, that figure tells you how dangerous the task is. If the figure's too high, then you can't do the task, you need to reduce it. Does that make sense? Yeah, good. So, and then here in this book, we just talk about what risk assessments are. So we know risks come into 5 stages, you know, what the task is, what the risk of injury is, who's going to be injured, what the likelihood of injury is, and then what we're going to do to reduce that injury. Okay, so if we risk assess something, we've said there's a potential to cause harm, and if there's potential to cause harm, then we have to do something about it. We can't leave the risk high. So again, I want you just to have a read of those. So again, amongst yourselves, just go through that. Good. So we'll start at the top. Health and safety. Everything starts off with health and safety, doesn't it, in the workplace? And for moving and handling, we know that all of our patients that have a sling, that use slings, we should have a sling examination form. Because we need to know when the sling was checked and by who. Because if the staff are using it, is the sling fit for purpose? So in other words, if we checked it for fraying, is it damaged anyway? Is there a tear in it? And what we should have here, under this risk assessment form, we should go through that, and if any of it's damaged, then we shouldn't be using the sling. Okay, so again, part of our risk assessment for using a hoist and using the slings is that we check the equipment on a regular basis. And I believe slings should be checked every 6 months for a visual check like this. So one of your carers should be doing a sling examination. Now, they should be doing it as a dynamic risk assessment. And what do I mean by dynamic risk assessment? Have you heard the term dynamic?
Mean? The dynamic risk assessment.
Yeah, what does it mean though? What does a dynamic risk assessment mean? If you don't know, that's fine. So dynamic, so dynamic risk assessment means it's ongoing. I'm going to do it all the time because it's okay saying, let's do a risk assessment every 6 months. But what if tomorrow it's broken?
Oh, this is what it calls dynamic.
So a dynamic risk assessment means the carers have a duty of care in law to do a risk assessment every time they carry out a task.
Okay.
Because if they don't, it's their fault. So yes, the law says we must do regular checks. So we must have regular checks for equipment and for the things that we're using for moving and handling. They're scheduled. So you can see on this form here, that's our sling form. So if we're using that sling, we should be checking it. However, the carer, every single time, should be checking that sling. Dynamic risk assessment. Happy with that? So yes. The question is, do you have, and don't answer this to me, but do you have that evidence to show that you are checking the slings in people's homes? And if you have got that evidence, great. And if you haven't got that evidence, you should have these for each patient that has a sling. So somebody in your business needs to become the moving and handling champion. Somebody that can go around and go, oh, yeah, that has been done. Yes, that has been done. Yes, that has been done. Yeah, but we'll talk about that another day because we're going to do the champion training. But sling checks really important because obviously we want to make sure they're safe. Okay, good. Then we've got information for the individuals, the service users. So let's face it, the service user, maybe the family are using the sling, or maybe our carers are using the sling. So in every home in Sutton, you must have this form. Now, I think this form should be in every home, not just Sutton. So Sutton has said to us, Sally, who is responsible for moving and handling Sutton, she said you can take the logo off, you can amend this as you need to. So if you've got Redbridge, Newham, Islington, just make sure you've put the right details on here. Okay. This should then be laminated or put in a plastic wallet, and it should be somewhere where family members and carers can see it in people's homes. So maybe attached to the hoist in a plastic wallet. But you can see here, it's just a check that says, look, are you checking the slings? Because part of a risk assessment is you check the equipment before you use it. But have we actually told the carers, have we told the family members what to look for? Because if we haven't and they injure themselves, we're liable. But if we've given them this, we're not liable because we've said, look, we've told you to look for fading on the label. We've told you to look for deterioration changes in the colours or straps. We've asked you to check for fraying. We've asked you to check the hoops. We've asked you to make sure that the straps are in the right place. So we've told you what to do. So if you then don't do that and you have an injury, whose fault is it? But if you haven't got this sign up and somebody gets injured, you've got a problem. Yeah, agree?
Yes. Yeah.
Good. So again, part of risk assessments. Then we've got the safety checks. So here, and this is for Sutton, it's worthwhile asking your occupational therapist for Redbridge and Newham for their copy, or you could just amend this as necessary. But here, this is just a notice telling people that's going to be using the equipment that they should be checking it every 6 months. So here it says, please review this statement below. Minimum every 6 months, you need to make sure that the equipment is fit for purpose. And if it's not, you report it. So again, for family members, for people in people's homes, for our carers, it tells you what the problem is, it tells you what the task is, and it tells you how often you should be checking equipment. Yeah?
Yeah.
So you can't get this wrong. You just need to follow the instructions.
Yes.
Lovely. Good. Then we've got lots of things about slings. Again, some staff's knowledge is better than others, but it just runs through the different types of slings, how they're used and what they are. That's more for the chartered assessor model when we go and prescribe. So we won't worry about that too much. Then we've got the standard operating procedure. Right, so I'm going to show you this before the risk assessments. So let's say you've written the care plan for me and I have a bed lever, I have a star at Sarah Steady, I have a turn disc, whatever it is, in my care plan, in my home, should be the instructions for those materials. So let's say the bed lever, there is the working instructions for the bed lever, how it's used, and all of the risks attached to it and the likelihood of injury. So it tells you what the risks are and what the potential is to be harmed by that piece of equipment. Now, you would think it's down to the prescriber of the equipment to provide all of this, and it's not. It's down to us to make sure that our staff know how to use it. So again, each of the operating procedures that you've got access to, so, you know, I don't know, at Sarah Steady, for example, it shows you how to use it and it gives you the step-by-step instructions. So, you know, in the care plan, when we talk about mobility and we talk about equipment, you could then just say, please see standard operating procedure number 6. So you don't have to rewrite all of this because this is the information on how to use that piece of equipment. Yeah. So again, that's the step-by-step instruction. Now, you can see here, it says you must have a FIM score of 3 or more. So that's that risk assessment tool that I was talking to you about. So the FIM, the Borg, and the Likely. We will get there, I promise. So the standard operating procedures for each of the processes should be linked in the care plans for each patient, for each piece of equipment that they're using. It's quite a lot, right? So you don't have to write them all out. You just have to write C standard operating procedures 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever it is, as long as you have attached this to the care plan. Yeah, so you don't have to do a lot to it. You're just attaching it. Good. Then what we've got here, as we go around to it, we then move in to the risk assessment. Now, this is Sutton's risk assessment tool. I'm aware we have our own in Care for IT in the app, but this is the one that Sutton wants us to use for Sutton. However, they have said as long as R1 does roughly the same, which I don't think it does. But anyway, I'm going to do another session on how to fill these in. Now, I filled this in. It roughly becomes about 20 pages long. So this is another big document, I'm afraid, guys. So in here, you're going to look at the relationships of people in the home. You're going to do their weights and heights, their medical history. So a lot of this stuff is just cut and paste in. Now, ideally, OT will have done this for you. But I don't see many risk assessments from OTs. I may be wrong, but I don't normally see them. And if we do, they're normally late. Now, this is where we start. So here is the FIM score. So the FIM score looks at their moving and handling tasks. So this is the risk assessment. So when we go out and assess somebody for the first time and we do the pre-admission stuff, if we had the FIM score with us, it would save us a lot of time because there's 2 things we need to know when we risk assess you. We need to know what is required by the client and what are the risks to the carer. Okay, because that's what we need to know. And all we're going to do here, we're going to look at, can the service user roll or move in their bed? And there's your grading. 1, not acceptable, 7 to their independent. Now here, this is the bit where we start talking about double-handed packages or single-handed packages. So if you go, it's a number 4, and you're saying this is a double up, let's go back. So if we're saying it's a 4 and it's a double up for the client there, because it takes 2 people, then we're going to look at what is the risk to the carers. So what are the carers doing? So are they lifting? Are they holding? Are they doing lots of repetitive stuff? So they may be doing lots of things. And in here, you may want to add a comment. If we then look at the FIM score, as we complete this, this will be all gridded up. Then further down, you're going to be able to look at the risks. Okay, so it then says, well, okay, we've scored this all up. We've got a number, but then what we're going to have to do is we're then going to have to decide what is the likelihood of harm. Now, the likelihood of harm comes from the FIM score. So you just saw that one of them said you had to have a FIM score of 3 and above. And that's because the service user has to do most of the work with moving and handling. because it's a risk to our carers otherwise. So they have to have a 3 and above. Oh, sorry, three and that way, minimum of 3. And then we've got the likelihood of injury. So let's just say we've got a patient, they need, I don't know, supervision. So there are 5. And the likelihood of injury is possible. Let's just say, you know, because they hit out or whatever it is. And if they do get injured, it could be quite a serious injury. Yeah, so we're using this to grade our scores. The next chart tells us then the risk. So we then have the likelihood, well, it's possible, and it could be quite severe. So that would give us a score of 12. And if we follow that down, it says it's high risk, meaning you can't accept that risk. Yeah, so that's how the tool works. So up here, we grade. Yeah, we're going through, we're grading everything. And then what we're going to do, we've said it's a 4 there. We're going to go down there, we're going to look at that. And we're going to go, so we've said it's dangerous, it's moderate, it's minor, let's say it's MA, that's a medium risk. So then up there, we would write AM. So that's the FIM score. So we're telling whatever the risk is there. And you will have a chance to practice this, don't worry, on the FIMs. But the more you read about it, the easier it'll be. And then obviously after that, we're then going to look at the control measures. So if we are saying it is moderate risk or high risk, we need to then list the task and what we're going to do to reduce the injury to our staff or to the service user or to the family members. Okay. Now, ultimately, the way that we're going to reduce those tasks is by using the standard operating procedures that I just showed you. We're going to say, we'll look at standard operating procedures because that's the safe way of doing it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Good. So that's the risk assessment. It's quite a detailed tool and it takes a lot of practice, but we'll do it together. So this is just an overview. I don't expect you to go away today and go, oh, I got that. I'm just showing you the tool. Okay. That's fine. So off the back of that, we then have Laurel, be quiet. After the back of that, we've then got some other tools that's quite useful to use. We've got the informal carers checklist. So if you're an informal carer, you're looking after your partner, we should be doing a risk assessment on them. So, you know, when we've gone into some homes and you've got a really elderly person looking after another elderly person, and you're a bit like, ooh, I think you need the care more than the person being cared for. We could do a care assessment on them and we could go, look, actually, the risk is too high. You shouldn't be anywhere near this patient. You know, I know in the best interest you want to help, but we should be doing an assessment. And if the risk is too high, we need to be flagging that up to be saying to social services. So you know, when we've got double up calls and the family member goes, oh, you don't need 2 carers because we're going to do it. Yeah. Do you know in those?
It happens. It happens so many times.
Exactly. And actually, they're just as bad. And I can think, don't mention any names, but I can think of somebody who's in a wheelchair and the husband likes to drink and he's not always fully there. Should he really be helping a carer? And the answer is probably no. But this is the assessment tool that would then say, no, you shouldn't be doing that task. Okay, so again, risk assess. We're not saying it's us. We're saying the tool said it's too dangerous. You've then got your carers there. And then for double ups, so this is the assessment tool for whether or not we should have 2 carers and not 1. Okay, so you know sometimes when we've gone, actually, this is a 2-man job or a 2-lady job or a 2-person job, whatever the correct pronoun is. And you're going to go, well, okay, how do I do that? So again, here, you're going to run through this and you complete this risk assessment. Now, in this one, we can use a score called the likely score. Okay, and that was the other assessment tool. And in the likely score, it does things like I like this more than I like this. So, for example, you might say, well, we're going to go from 2 carers down to 1 carer because what we're going to do, we're going to give you a new piece of equipment. Okay, so we're going to get rid of one of the carers, we're going to give you a piece of equipment. What might happen is that they go, but I don't like that equipment. Well, if you don't like the equipment and you can't use it, it's not safe. So the likely scale looks at what is the likelihood that you're going to do it, and you'll see that in the thing. And the other one is the exertion scale. So the exertion scale is for the member of staff, when we assess somebody, if we're going to reduce a care package, the member of staff must not be any more exerted than what they are if there's 2 of you. So what that means is, let's say you're both caring for me, and by the time you've cared for me, you go, cool, on a scale of 1 to 10, that's quite hard work. Stephen's an 8 or a 9. You know, it's hard work. Great. OT comes in and they go, we're going to reduce that care package because we think we can. And we're going to put it down to 1 carer. And then one of you care for me and you go, God, Lord, that was now a 9. Well, you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to do that. So the exertion scale can't go up. Does that make sense? It can go down, but it can't go up. So if the exertion goes up, if we are more tired from doing the task with 1 carer, then that's not safe. Okay. So again, just introduce you to this for the first time, because I know it's a lot to take in. So ultimately, I'm going to leave you this week to have a look at them, and next week we'll start to really go into a bit more detail because we can think about some patients where things have happened, because you'll have a better idea. So what you've got is a load of risk assessment tools for decision making. You've got 1 tool there. Is this a single call or a double up call? What's the FIM score? Does the FIM score say it's too dangerous? If it's too dangerous, we shouldn't do it. We've got the assessment for a second carer. So that's the exertion scale. On a scale of 1 to 10, if the 2 of you were doing it, it was a 5, great. Then actually, it needs to be less than 5 if I'm doing it on my own. It can't go up, because if it goes up, that's not safe. Because when we do the exertion scale, we should be looking at round a score of 4 and below. Because 4 is acceptable. 4 is, this is an okay amount of effort that I need to put in. But the more that effort goes up, the more fatigued I'm going to get as the carer, the more exhausted I am, the more likely it is I'm going to cause harm and danger. Yeah, so that gives you that one. And then you've also got the tools for monitoring the slings, because that's the biggie, and the equipment in people's homes. Now, the other thing that you've then got for ours is then, this is R1, which looks completely different to the others and is a lot less. So here, you've got their normal bits and pieces up here. Factors to be considered, they're simply yes or no's. Okay, so have you seen these ones?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, good. Okay, so can they communicate? Yes, no, please specify. So you could just say, please see care plan, page 1. You don't have to rewrite everything already. You can signpost to documents, is what we've been told in our training. Because what you tend to find is you end up copying it over and over again, don't you? You end up saying the same thing over and over again. And all that happens there is things get missed. Where if you're pointing to 1 document, it's easier to maintain 1 document than 7 or several. So just think about risks around communication, risks around challenging behavior. So if you have a factor there, then decide on the risk. So if we're saying, does the person have a cognitive or behavioral issue, and you go yes, then what we're going to need to see there is the behavior plan. Yeah. So each of those are going to have a thing. If we say, for example, let's say skin and tissue viability, you should have done the Waterloo score, the pressure scores. Yeah. Yeah. Happy with those? Do they have a history of falls? If you put yes, then we should have a copy of the falls plan. Good. If we look at this bit then, where it says the person can lift legs independently, low, medium, and high, that's fine. Here, we could do the likely scale or the exertion scale. Because you could say, look, the person can lift their legs, but on a scale of 1 to 10, on the exertion scale, they're like an 8 or a 9. Like they can do it, but once they've done it, they're exhausted.
Mm.
Well, then you need equipment. And the equipment. So what you can do on the hoists, there is a leg strap that you can get just for a leg to lift the leg up on a hoist. Fine. So there's things that we can do. Now, we're talking about outcome-based care. So let's just say we want to see if this patient is improving. So here we could say when they were assessed, we go, what's the likely scale? So what's the exertion scale? And you go 8. Great. When I reassess you and I go, what's your exertion scale? And you go, oh, it's a 5 now. Great, you've gone down, so the care plan's working. Yeah, so it gives you an outcome. So the exertion scale is a great scale of evidence for why you're doing what you're doing. So again, here, does the person or persons sitting in balance? Yes, great, but what's the score? So again, for each of those things, you need to find in your comment, have an assessment tool that you're going to agree on as the outcome. So are you going to use FIM? Are you going to use Borg? Are you going to use likely? Or are you going to use exertion? But justify why you're saying what you're saying, standardize it across the team, and then you've now got outcome-based care. Yeah? Now I can see that, okay, it's improving because your scores have gone down. Or if you need a double up, if you need more money, you can now say why you need more money because the score's going up.
Yeah.
You can't do it. Bob can lift his leg. Great. Doesn't say that he can do it well. And it doesn't prove what's going on in the long term. Good. If we then look at then here, tasks requiring the handling plan. So positioning in and about sit, sits down, walk, transfers, and that lot. So let's say reposition in bed and you've put Bob is able to do this independently. Think about the FIM score. Can Bob do that without exhaustion? Because yes, he could probably move himself in bed, but does that work? Now, let's say OT comes in and they go, Bob can use a sliding sheet. And you're like, Bob finds it hard to use a sliding sheet. And then they go, okay, well, let's change it for a satin sheet. You know, the glide sheets, the 4-way glides. Does that improve his care or not improve his care? Does that make sense? So does the score go up? Does it go down? The likely score. Because Bob may say, I bloody hate that equipment. I'm not using it. I bloody hate it. Get rid of that equipment. Well, it's meant to be personal centered. So if Bob doesn't like the sliding sheet, then we need to go back to OT and change it.
Yes.
Yeah. So again, here, when we look at these, what we need to see is when it says reasoning, what are you prescribing? What is the technique? And what is the evidence for that technique? What's the score? Yeah, because it may be Bob is in bed, he's able to reposition on a satin sheet because they glide. But he needs a bar rail to do that. Exertion score 2. Great. No exertions, to glide, no probs. However, OT may come in and swap it because they're expensive. They're going to go, oh, have a £2 plastic red sliding sheet. And Bob goes, I'm able to do it, but now my exertion is 6. Great, we've just given the evidence of why he can't use it.
Yeah.
Not because he doesn't like it or our staff don't know how to use it. Am I making sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So that's what you're going to do there. Then here, moving and handling equipment's demonstrated. Now, this bit is really important because this is the bit that you're going to say, we have shown it to the carers and the family members, or we haven't. If you are showing it to a spouse, make sure you have done that spouse risk assessment. Because what you are saying is, I think you're okay at doing this task. And most of them probably aren't. Now, if you've done the assessment, if you show them how to do something and you haven't risk assessed them, you are going to be in serious trouble. Because you've basically said to them, no, it's all right, you can do it. But if you have assessed them and it's come up that they're not suitable to do it, then you're going to say, I haven't demonstrated this technique because it wasn't safe to do so. Yeah? So if you write the technique, it's because you've demonstrated it. Now, in here, you don't need to write all of the techniques. You can just write C, standard operating procedure, whatever it is for that technique. Yeah, you don't need to put lots and lots in there. Or just a few bullet points. Because if you put too much detail in here, they're not going to be able, the staff just don't read it. They just won't read it. So it needs to be a very simple step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. Gain consent, wash hands, get equipment, move them on the sheet, ready, steady, slide, job done kind of thing, you know, but you can copy and paste that from the standard operating procedures. Now, ultimately, you need to do that for each piece or for each task that happens to that member. So it's 1 for moving them in bed, 1 for moving them in a wheelchair, 1 for a transfer, 1 for a transfer into the bath. Because each technique will have a different risk. Yeah, happy with that? So if you're saying we help him to get in and out of bed, we help him to move from bed to chair, we help him to transfer, then you have to have the technique for each task that you have assessed him for. Yeah, good. Okay. And then here, it then moves it down into a little bit more. So then for each task that you identify up here, you're then going to list it here. So task 1, moving in and out the chair. How many people are required? So what assessment do you need for that? Number of staff required. What assessment, risk assessment tool are you going to use for that? Remember that double up one? So
Yes.
you've got that double care assessment. So if you put 2 in there, justify it.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you're going to say, I'm going to move Steve from bed to chair and I need 2 staff, the evidence, you're going to write evidence, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, whatever it is. And then in here, you're just going to put the bullet points. So in this box here, you're going to put bullet points, name of each piece of equipment. And look, there's your standard operating procedures there. You can just put the numbers in there. So it doesn't need you to do it all. And here, where you're assessing low, medium, and high, which there is absolutely nowhere on there, which gives you the definition of low, medium, and high, I would be using the FIM score to get that. So I would then be looking down here for the task, low, medium, and high. So and you can see the difference in paperwork, can't you? Because on this form, it clearly tells you how do you get to that risk, low, medium, and high, where on our form, it doesn't tell you how do you get to that choice. So how did you, let's say you're going to move me from chair to bed, how did you decide it was a low risk? You just tick a box. There's no evidence for that, is there?
Yeah.
So if I end up injuring myself, someone's going to come back to you and go, well, why did you tick that box? And you're going to go, I don't know. But
So we need the FIM score.
if you use the FIM score, you can go, well, I tick that box because moving Stephen from chair to bed, it's, we're using, I don't know, let's just say we're using a sliding board, for example. Well, he's got good upper body strength, so it's quite minor that he's going to injure himself. And if he does fall, it's really unlikely or very rare that he's going to injure himself.
Yes.
Therefore, the FIM score shows it's low risk. I haven't made that up. That's evidence-based. Yeah? So
Yes.
ultimately, anything that's evidence-based takes away the decision from you. Because what would happen in a court of law is they would go, why did you do that? And you're going to go, I don't know. And that's not a good defense for a registered manager. So what you're going to say is, I did that because the FIM score said. So you need this. And again, you can download the FIM score, the Borg score, the Likert score, and the exertion scale. You can download them off the internet. And I have got copies up in my manual. And I've ordered the HOP7 for you all, which is the standard operating procedure for 2024. But in there, it talks about risk and how you assess risk and the different assessment tools. But just be mindful that when you say something as a manager, it is you said. If I tell you to do something, you'll say, Steve said, do this. So then the judge comes for me and goes, Steve, why did you say that? And then I'm going to go, well, because the national guidelines said. Yeah. So what I'm showing you is what's in the HOP7, which is the standard operating manual procedure for moving and handling, which is endorsed by the National Back Exchange. Okay, so what I'm showing you are nationally recognised tools. That, I'm afraid, is not a nationally recognised tool. It is somebody that has built a website and gone, oh, we need a risk assessment, and hasn't really put a lot of thought into the risk assessment. But as care staff, you're going to fill it in because that's the best you can do, where actually you need the information behind it. And equally, on Care for IT, Careline Life, sorry, it hasn't got standard operating procedures, has it? There's no SOPs attached to it. So now what you can do, you can go back to this, you can look at your SOPs, and you're going to go, it's number, there's your Saturn sheet system, there's your sliding sheets there. So, because you don't need to copy that all over. Look, there's all the risks. What's the risk to the person? There. What's the likelihood? How do you clean them? There's the criteria for using them, and there's the method. So just write SOP 1, and in there, just write a brief caption. Yeah, happy with that?
Yeah.
Good. And then obviously, this think bit, which is task, individual load, and environment, is just your normal standard moving and handling risk assessment tool. So is the task big, small? Does it require 1 or 2 people? Is the load heavy? Does the environment need any adaptation? So there's a house that I can think of where you've got a larger man in a bed. He hasn't moved for a very long time, and you've got that step, but you've got the overhead galley that goes on the top. So the environment there is rubbish, because actually what they've done by putting his bed on a slope down one piece in the galley, they've restricted him to that one room because he's a large man and you can't get him out. So, and then the environment is quite tight. So just bear that in mind. So what I want you to do, your homework this week, is I want you to look at all of the stuff that I've given you, the files, because this won't make sense unless you've got access to those files. That's why I showed you those files. I then want you to go through a handling assessment, and you can do it for the care plan people that you've already done. Because I know those people now.
Yeah.
So do it for the care plan people that you've done. And I want you to complete a handling assessment based upon now what we've talked about. Does that make sense? So the rule of thumb is very simple. If you say something, just tell me what the evidence is behind it. You know, if you're saying we need this equipment, why? The exertion scale was a 4. However, most of the staff found it a 6 or a 7. Therefore, we've requested a sliding sheet. Since the new sliding sheet, it's back down. The exertion scale's gone down. If you've gone a single to a double up, why are you requesting a double up? The exertion on the member of staff is a score of 8. With 2 people, that goes down to a 4.
Yeah.
Great, you've justified it. Do you know how difficult it would be for me as a commissioner, contractor, to then say you're lying? Because you've just given me nationally approved evidence to why you're justifying it. I then would have to prove that you're wrong, which becomes very difficult because you're using approved assessment tools. Yeah. So assessment tools used in the right way do 2 things. They keep you safe, but they justify contracts up and down. Because when OTs come in and they reduce care packages, they're reducing them based on their risk assessment tools. But actually, they're not the ones doing the work. It's the carers that should be asked, how exhausted are you after this task? And if it's, and then what happens is, so when they reduce a package from 2 down to 1, you shouldn't be doing the same task in the same time. Because if you've gone 2 down to 1, it may be appropriate then for that task to have another 15 minutes or another half an hour.
Yeah.
But sometimes that doesn't happen. So again, if they reduce the package down, because your job as managers is to keep your staff safe. So if you did a risk assessment on your staff, it's going to come up that they're exhausted and fatigued, meaning you're not doing enough to protect your staff. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Good. I appreciate that that is an awful lot of information in a very short space of time today. But you have got the books that I've sent you to have a read, the FIM book about your audit tools. And again, if you don't want to read those, that's fine. Just Google it. You know, if you want to Google the FIM score, Google the Borg score, Google the Likert Scale, Google the exertion scale, do it. You've got a copy of the standard operating procedures. You've got the information for the service users, so the checklists. Oh, and then for staff training, so for your staff, which are the most important part here, what is it you're doing for them? So the champions training, I'm just talking to Wagner at the moment. He's going to select a couple of champions. They're going to be trained up in all of this and all the extra stuff. So they're going to be trained up. But that's there, have a read of it. You've then got your competencies. So you know how you have your checklists for spot checks?
Yeah.
Yeah. That is nowhere near fit for purpose when we're talking about moving and handling. That's your checklist just for using a hoist. Just for a hoist. Yeah. So again, if you are using a hoist, every year you should have a competency checklist for the hoist. Because how do you know they're doing it properly? How do you know they're doing it safely? You know, and if you've got somebody saying to you, oh, every time I've used that hoist, it's really hard work. It's like a score of 8 or 9, and then you've got others going, oh no, it's a score of 3 or 4, then you know someone's not doing something right. They're probably moving it with the bloody brakes on. Happens, right? Oh, I forgot the brakes were on. Then you've got your we've already done the annual competencies. There's your moving and handling competencies. So that is the annual checklist for moving and handling somebody. So you've got your hoist, and then you've got your normal moving and handling competency. Okay, so they should be on all of the staff. And then, look, Sally liked it that much, she gave it to us 3 times. I don't know why she gave it to us 3. Who's the Sutton manager? Okay, this is Sally. So you have to make sure all of this stuff you have got.
Okay.
Because Sally, she is on it. She is strict. Yeah. Because she trained me for 4.5 days. 4.5 days on how to move someone. Strict. So I don't think you only need one of those. But anyway, basically what we're saying is for moving and handling, the patient should have information and checklists. The service users, their family members should have checklists and information. The staff should have information and checklists. And then there should be a risk assessment.
Okay.
Does your brain now hurt?
Yes, very puzzling because so many documents there. So we have to read all of this.
You're going to have to go through it, and then you're going to have to find a way of making sure that they are done timely. So the risk assessment, it should be as and when needs changes, or at least once a year. The sling checks every 6 months. The hoist checks every year. The competencies for the staff every year. And that has to be audited.
Yeah.
Needless to say, though, when you then go back to your care plans, you can now see in the moving and handling part that there's a fair bit that you could link to. Because you've got all of the risk assessments, all the tools, all the likelihood scores and all that lot. And what we're going to do as we go through this, as we look at nutrition and hydration, you should be doing a must score. As we're looking at moving and handling somebody, you've got your Waterloo score for shearing and all of that lot for pressure care. So as we start to move forward, your knowledge around clinical assessment tools is going to increase because you have to back everything up. So if you say somebody's at risk of a pressure sore, then you need to back that up with the Waterloo score. Well, why are they at risk of pressure sores? Well, they're at risk of pressure sores because they're diabetic, they've got a must score of I don't know, 5 or 6, they're not mobilizing, their FIM score is high, blah, 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 blah. This is why I need an urgent referral. Because the more you talk in a clinical way, the less problems you're going to get from social services and people, because they're going to go, oh, they know what they're talking about.
Yes.
So it'll be a bit of a mountain to climb, but I know you can do it because you did it on the policies and you've done it on the care plan. So now we're going to push you up for risk assessment. So that's what we're going to be concentrating on for the next 3 weeks anyway.
Okay.
All right. Make sure you can access this.
200 mistakes, right?
Huh?
We can do it 200 times, like we
Absolutely, 200 times till you get it right. You'll be like, but Steve, I've already done it. I'll be like, no, have a look at my comments.
okay, yes.
But the reality is, once it's stuck in your head, it will be there forever. Like if somebody then comes along and says to you, why have you done that? You'll be like, have you ever met Steve? He made me do it 9 times. And then it'll just be there. And the idea of your training, the reason it's short theory, lots of practical, is because when you sit in front of an inspector and they say to you, right, you've got a patient, what are you going to do for them? It's all going to be there, And if you want to impress contractors and patients and inspectors, then this is all of the knowledge you need. I'm doing this because the risk assessment tool says the FIM score is, the likelihood score is, the Borg score is, because now you're talking like a consultant, you're talking like a clinical practitioner.
Yes.
where what they're used to is because the risk assessment told us. Why did you hit that box? I don't know. It was just there. Well, then you shouldn't be looking after people, should you, if you don't know why you're ticking boxes? So, and when we think about the assessment tools, so the Borg score, the Likert scale, the exertion scale, we can use those in pretty much anything, you know, because we can think about maybe a patient with medication and dementia. Do you like doing it this way or do you like doing it that way? Well, when you do it this way, it's a score of, I don't know, 1, great. But when we do it that way, it's a score of 8, fine. So that's why we're doing it that way. So it's not because we're doing it as a best interest. We're doing it because the Likert score says this is your preferred method. If we look at exertion and we say, well, how tired do we get? So a member of staff might go, I'm giving Barbara her medicine and it's exhausting. It takes forever. And we've started on a score of 8 or 9. But by the time you get to review the package, it's gone down to a 5. Great, then the interventions are working. Or you may be starting at, look, Barbara's hard work, it's a 5, but now it's an 8. Then why has that score gone up? What is it we're doing? Why? But if you don't score anything, there's no evidence. Because all you have, I'm afraid, are care notes. We turned out, we did this, we did that, we did that. And I know you guys know, but when you read some of those care notes, you're a bit like, you did what? And it doesn't really make sense. Fine. But if you're assessing them, that's the bit that does make sense. I scored them here because I'm now scored them again because. And therefore, you can justify an increase or a decrease. Because care in all of the contracts, especially Islington, I don't know if any of you are going to be ending up dealing with Islington, but they are outcome based. They want to know, is the care working? Does the care work? And your evidence for that has to be quantitative. There has to be, you know, on the outcome star, it's all value based, you know, personal care, it was a 7, now it's a 3. Food and drink, they couldn't do it, it was an 8, now it's a 2. So look at your assessment tools, okay? And as a business, as managers, decide the ones that you think are the most easiest to use, because let's not forget, you've got to teach your staff to use these. And you need the patients to understand them as well. And then what we need to do, once you've understood them, we need to translate that into care notes. Met Bob today, did the moving handling task, was a score of 8. Oh, that's quite high. Next person, did Bob's moving handling score, actually it was a 4. Okay, so why was it an 8 in the morning and a 4 in the afternoon? 8 in the morning because he was stiff, maybe he needs his medication. So those scores, you don't need to read the notes. The moment you start seeing numbers, you're going to be going, that's working, that's not working. So it's a lot quicker for you to problem solve. Can you see how that would work?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's actually, in the long run, it's going to be less work for you. And when a commissioner says to you, or when CQC says to you, how do you know it's working? You're going to be there very, very smug. You're going to be, well, because my Likert score is, or my, you know, exertion scores for my staff are. And if occupational health comes in and they're challenging you, you're going to be going, no, 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 no. Unless you get that score down to a 3, it's not happening. But they can walk over you all because none of you know about it. And that's why they do walk over you all. Happy with that?
Yep.
Yes.
Good. So recap on homework. So homework, I know I haven't had a drink yet. I will. I'll take you guys out for a whiskey.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Dion's like, they'll drink you under the table. Like, not a chance, Dion, not a chance. I've been doing it for nearly 30 years. I'm pretty hard. I can drink a bottle of Jack Daniels and still be standing.
Shall we see one day?
Absolutely, absolutely. Once I finish training you, there's no conflict of interest. I'll take you out for a graduation bottle. Right.
Looking
Yeah. See, now we just want to get to graduation. Yeah, we'll have to do this because I want to drink Steve under the table. We'll kick his ass. We'll give him payback. How many times did you make us do that, Steve? Right. So, policy, you're going to train somebody up to do the policy, because don't forget, effective leadership isn't you doing it. Effective leadership is you learning it and delegating it. You just have to learn it and learn it well. So you've got policy to delegate, you've got the handbook, the main assessment to delegate. You're going to go through this and you're going to write me up a risk assessment so I can review next week. Or as soon as you've done it, WhatsApp it to me, and then I can start saying to you yes or no. Okay. Yeah, happy with that?
Yeah.
Yep.
Anything else?
No, because we have to read first. Then if we have question, we will ask in the group.
WhatsApp it. And where's the other person that's meant to be joining us?
She is doing duty coordinator job today.
Have I scared her off?
I don't know. She is doing duty. What happened?
Okay. Are you supporting her though? Does she know what she needs to be doing? Because it's all in the WhatsApp group.
Yeah, she knows. We showed her how to write policy. I showed her yesterday, so she's making one.
Okay, good. So I can check that. Yeah. Lovely. All right. Well, good luck, guys. If you need anything, you know where I am. Have a great weekend. And are you in London tomorrow in the office?
I will be Newham office tomorrow.
Okay, well, I'm up there tomorrow because I'm doing recordings for your staff for them.
Wagner also said, Wagner.
What time are you going to be there tomorrow?
Oh, what time you will be there? Wagner asking.
Is Wagner in the background?
Yes. Yeah.
Hi, Wagner.
Yeah,
just as well, I didn't say anything horrible about you, wasn't it? I shall be there for 9 o'clock.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah. So we'll be there for 9. We're going to run through the competencies for BLS and food safety, etc. I'm going to add in a few little extra bits around AED, etc. And then, actually, what you two could do, you could show Wagner those staff training stuff, can't you, for the competencies for moving and handling?
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. But anyway, that's on our list. Next.
Okay, so see you tomorrow morning. Yeah?
Yeah. Yes, I'll see you in the morning, Wagner. Take care. Well, and then I'll probably take Wagner out for a drink first, because like he's not, you know, he's doing all of his work. Take care, guys.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.